General Amos Yadlin is the former head of the IDF Military Intelligence Directorate and the founder and current president of Mind Israel. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. So Amos, looking at the current war in Gaza, your perceptions nearly half a year on.
There are two goals to the war. One, to dismantle Hamas, and second, to bring back the hostages. We are not yet into these goals. 50% of the hostages are still at the hands of Hamas. Hamas is basically dismantled as a government in northern Gaza, but not in the Rafah area and not in the central camps. But its military might is now down, I think, 90%. They cannot attack any Israeli settlement, and they hardly fire rockets. As terrorists who are in urban area, they are still a threat, but it's a threat only if Israel entering into Gaza. So Israel is now safer than it was on the 6th of October.
So let's break what you've said and these two goals of the war. One is Hamas, second is the hostages. Let's start with the hostages. We're seeing negotiations in Doha, Qatar since yesterday. What are the chances to bring on a deal this time?
I think the chances depends on three leverages that Hamas should feel against it. One is the military leverage. As long as the IDF keep operational tempo that basically destroy more and more Hamas unit, kill more and more Hamas commanders and Hamas terrorists, I think at the end of the day, it has an effect. Second leverage is the political leverage from Qatar and Egypt. This, unfortunately, not strong enough. I would like to see Qatar threatening that if there is no deal, Hamas leaders will be removed from Doha, as well as future support for Hamas will decrease dramatically. And the last one is the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Unfortunately, Sinwar, on one hand, doesn't pay attention to it. And the Americans' pressure on Israel basically release Gaza from being a disaster humanitarian area, even though it is not a place that somebody wants to live in.
But even if there is a deal today, Amos, which will bring back 40 Israeli hostages from Gaza in return for some conditions, what will be about the rest? You know, there are 134 Israelis over there. Some of them are alive, some of them are dead. How can we bring everybody back home? Is it possible?
That's exactly why the demands of Hamas, that Israel will stop the war, will have a commitment to stop the war, and Israel will withdraw from Gaza, cannot be any part of the first deal. It should be negotiated on the second deal. So Israel should keep the three leverages vis-a-vis Hamas that Israel has. One is the continuation of the war, the threat of continuation of the war. Second is the territorial achievement that Israel has. And last but not least, don't let the population, the million people that left northern Gaza, to go back before, as a result of the first stage of the deal. All these three leverages should be kept for the second part of the deal to make sure that all the hostages to the last one and all the bodies will come back to Israel.
And now I'll take you to you know, the other goal of the war, or maybe the first one, some would say, which is dismantling Hamas, killing its leaders, ruining its leadership in Gaza, bringing back a new force. How do you see it? Up to date, and what's on the cards for the next stage?
As I said, Hamas as a governance of Gaza, I think, is now dismantled, especially if there will be an operation in Rafah. Militarily, as an army that was able to operate a wide-scale invention into Israel, it is also over. But, and here is the main problem with our government strategy, they haven't declared and they are not strategized what will be the future regime in Gaza. Everybody understands that we don't want Hamas to be the dominant power or even a secondary power, and everybody except lunatic right-wingers in Israel don't want Gaza to be annexed to Israel or a new settlement there. Israel should not be the occupier in Gaza over 2 million Palestinians. So you need something different between these two, which are not desired goals of the war. And here the Israeli government is not doing what we in Mind Israel recommended 4 months ago. Find technocrat Palestinian, not the PA, the current PA. The current PA is corrupt, it's inefficient, unable to destroy terror in Jenin and Tulkarem, but technocrat Palestinians from the diaspora, like former Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, maybe Mohammed Dakhlan, a lot of technocrats that can take over Gaza if there will be a political structure, especially monitoring and giving a lot of support from Arab consortium. Egypt doing law and order, the Saudis supporting financially, the UAE continue to do what they are doing now for the benefit of the people of Gaza, humanitarian help, helping with change the culture in Gaza, the education in Gaza, from being a terror state to being something that will remind us Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Singapore. This is the vision.
Can it be met given the political situation in Israel, given the distances between Jerusalem and Washington, given the relationship, the bad relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden?
It is not so much the bad relation between Netanyahu and Biden. It is the fact that the Prime Minister is a hostage to his right-winger. His political survival is more important than strategize on important national security objectives that we share with the United States. The United States is supporting and still support us and still supporting us in the two important goals, to dismantle Hamas and to bring back the hostages. However, they are not with us on the issue of the day after. And the day after should be agreed in spite of his right-wing government. He can bring on this issue the other political forces in Israel, of Gantz and Lapid. And I think if he would have done a different government, the relation with the US would be much better. After saying that, remember that the US support Israel on the two main goals, but they are much more sensitive to three issues. The escalation in other areas of the Middle East, the humanitarian crisis, and the collateral damage, the number of uninvolved civilians that are killed. And all these three issues, we should talk with them. We should discuss with them how they have done it in Iraq, in Afghanistan, vis-a-vis ISIS. And I think, once again, when the good atmosphere would be cleared from elements of right-wingers in Israel, that basically disturbing and having a shadow on the dialogue, Israel and the US can be much closer, and it will serve Israel national security long-run goals.
And if it is not done, do you see a threat to the good relationship, a very good relationship between the administrations, between the countries? Do you see a risk to the supply of arms during the war, to the veto in the Security Council of the UN? Is all that at risk, or Israel is safe?
I think that this is an extreme steps, what you just mentioned. Every president in the United States, whatever were his disagreement with Israel, on one issue, the U.S. never sanctioned Israel, and this is the issue of the security of Israel. And not having a veto in the Security Council, we saw 3 vetoes because of the hostages, because we share the same goal, because there are American passport holders in the hostages, and I don't see this as a real threat. On the contrary, I think the U.S. should understand that this war is part of a global war, of a regional war, or let's say not a war, a conflict, short of war. Iran that behind all these proxies and giving them money, support, financial support, weapon support, is now allied with the 2 enemies of the U.S., the 2 superpowers that the U.S. really care about. It's Russia and China. And the U.S. and Israel is on the other camp, together with other countries. And the basic interest of the U.S. is not to weaken Israel. But I say this is subject for no escalation and not humanitarian crisis.
Amos, let's touch the northern front. We see Israel and Hezbollah fighting each other on a lower scale since October 7th. Where is this war heading? What should Israel expect? How can it reach its goals without entering a full-scale war with Hezbollah?
It's very interesting, Yoav. The 2 sides don't want to escalate for a full-scale war. The 2 sides even try to avoid a middle intensity war that can miscalculate and escalate, even though both sides don't want to a full-scale war. So we see Hezbollah and Israel fighting in a low-intensity war, basically limited themselves to a short range, 0 to 10 kilometers, numbers of attack, like 10 attacks a day, and both sides trying to attack only military targets. These rules of game are kept by both, even though at that time, we don't know what is the action and what is the reaction. We only remember that Hezbollah initiate the aggression against Israel without any Israeli provocation. So the results of this low-intensity war is 100% tactically won by Israel. 300 Hezbollah and other terror organizations, terrorists were killed. A lot of the hundreds were wounded. Storage, rockets, missiles were destroyed. High-ranking commanders. On this war, Israel is the winner. However, if you move from the tactical level to the strategic level, Hezbollah created a strategic problem for Israel by the populations that left the north. And here, even if we will have tomorrow or next week ceasefire in Gaza, and Hezbollah will stop firing, that's what they declare that they will do. For Israel, it's not good enough. The population want to see Radwan force far away from the border, and the anti-tank missiles, which is the main damage to Israel, should be removed, and this say at least 10 kilometers. So Israel will like to see 1701 diplomatic efforts to re-establish the articles of 1701 that there is no Hezbollah south of the Litani River. If this is not going to happen, and I think Israel will give it a chance, a month or two, then Israel will have to choose the time and the mode of operation to remove Hezbollah from the border.
But in the meantime, Amos, if Hezbollah stops firing, if there is a hostage deal, and then there is a ceasefire in Gaza, and then there is a ceasefire by Hezbollah, should Israel cease its fire as well in order, maybe to let the area calm down? Or if Israel might be afraid that if, it stops firing for 6 weeks, later no one around the world will let it go back to fight. And then we were stuck with, as you said, Radwan forces on the border, etc., etc. So Israel might need to keep on fighting in the north while it's not fighting in the south.
Once again, we have to go to the big picture, the grand strategy. And the grand strategy for Israel is a hostages deal, which is the #1 priority. Then ceasefire in the south, ceasefire in the north, some kind of revised PA taking over from us in Gaza, and then normalization with the Saudis. I think this is the best way to get from this war some opportunities that will improve national security of Israel. I think Israel will left with enough legitimacy if Hezbollah will not accept 1701 in the way that will be acceptable for Israel. So
Amos, we lost you. Are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I'm with you. Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Okay.
Keep on going.
I'm saying that Israel will have enough.
Yes, we will go back to Amos Yadlin in just a minute. Yes, we'll take a short break. No, we're back with Amos Yadlin now. So Amos, we're back with you. Can you hear us? Yes. Yeah, so once we were talking, there is an announcement by the Canadian Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, saying that Canada has decided to stop weaponry selling to Israel. So obviously, Canada is not a big supplier to Israel, and yet, what should we learn out of such a decision? Canada is the biggest ally of the U.S., a big democracy, a big partner of Israel in the past. What can we learn out of it? It's a breaking news from now.
I think it's a parliamentary decision. It's not a government decision.
No, it's a government decision from now, from half an hour ago.
To the best of my knowledge, it was not. It was a resolution that brought to the Canadian Parliament, but you should check it. It's in a way showing you that Israel should be very careful in picking first its sources of supply, encourage the domestic supply of weapons, and try to have a better understanding in the world who is to blame in this war, who have started it, who can stop it in every moment, and who is using his population as a human shield. More than that, I cannot add, but I want to go back to Hezbollah and saying that there will be legitimacy for Israel, even if there is pause of hostilities in the north. Because once again, Hezbollah have started, Hezbollah violated 1701, and I think whoever will try to have a diplomatic solution, at the end will blame Hezbollah because it is very, very clear that they are violating 1701. So if Israel will decide then to initiate a military operation, there will be legitimacy there.
So with the 1 minute that we have left, can you see Israel reaching a decisive victory in the north as it aims to do in Gaza?
I think Lebanon, in a paradoxal way, is more vulnerable than Gaza. The leader of Hamas in Gaza doesn't care. Gaza, and you will understand that he doesn't care, that 60% of Gaza is destroyed and people lost their apartments and their homes, and 32,000 people, according to Hamas counting, are dead. Nasrallah is much more sensitive to his people. He has the lesson of 2006 in Bedachia about what will happen to Beirut, and now when he saw what happened to Gaza, he can even update his memories. He cares about the villages in the south, which are mostly Shia villages. So Israel will find it easier to create a huge pain in Lebanon.
Amos Yadlin.
But I'm not speaking, once again, it will never be a decisive or absolute victory, but it can achieve the goals of a future war.
Amos Yadlin, thank you so much. You were the first interviewee of this show about 10 years ago, and you're the last one. So thank you very much for this interview. We take a short break, and we'll be right back with more on